Along with such films as Blade and the X-Men, Sam Raimi's Spider-Man trilogy helped cement the superhero movie status as the premier genre of the new millennium, paving the way for the eventual success of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, in addition to its many failed imitators. But either way, had it not been for Toby Maguire's famous turn as the web-slinger, many classic superhero movies that we know and love today may have never gotten made. And today, I'd like to briefly go over all three movies in the original Spider-Man trilogy and look at how good they are and how they helped influence future superhero movies. And needless to say, there will be spoilers ahead. So if you haven't seen any of these movies and don't want to know what happens, now's your chance to turn off the video. Okay, so to start at the beginning, we have the original Spider-Man movie released in 2002. Making for perhaps the definitive cinematic portrayal of Spider-Man's origin story, this movie perfectly embodies everything the character represents, and does a particularly good job of hammering home the famous message that with great power comes great responsibility. And in addition to that, it's also got great action, an effective emotional center in Peter Parker learning to do what's right, and perfect performances by the entire cast. And not to mention, the Green Goblin makes for the perfect archenemy to Spider-Man, being both somebody that he can't physically overpower, as well as dictated by nothing but an insane desire to fulfill his every evil whim. And Willem Dafoe perfectly sells the Goblin as somebody Spider-Man might not be able to beat, as well as Norman's split personality and how it drives him deeper and deeper into madness. And their confrontations on the rooftop and their final fight are done particularly well in showing that dynamic. The former of which being so good, I even did a whole separate video on it, which you can find a link in the description to. But seriously, the Green Goblin is such a perfect representation of insanity, it wouldn't be surprising if it influenced Heath Ledger's take on the Joker in The Dark Knight. And next we have Spider-Man 2, which for a long time set the standard for what a good superhero movie could look like, and is still to this day considered one of the best movies of the genre, reinforcing everything that Peter learns in the first movie, while at the same time making him question if it's all worth it, was probably the best way to continue his story. Sure, it may lean very heavily into his existential crisis, but that was honestly the best direction to go in. And Dr. Octavius makes for the perfect follow-up villain to the Green Goblin, in that he's pretty much the exact opposite of him, being a well-meaning man whose mind is corrupted by his own invention, only to actually break free at the end and redeem himself. Seriously, everything about this character, from the effects to Alfred Molina's performance, is simply excellent. And even the romantic subplot is done pretty well, contrary to what some people might think. But I already covered that in a separate video, which you can also find a link in the description too. So the point is, Spider-Man 2 is considered one of the best sequels of all time for a reason, because it gets pretty much everything about what it means to be Spider-Man right. And finally, there's Spider-Man 3, which is widely seen as inferior to the first two and does suffer from some bad writing. And the biggest impact it had on pop culture was probably all the memes that sprouted up as a result of its more questionable moments. But that being said, it still has value, perhaps more than it's usually given credit for. Peter falling under the influence of the symbiote before coming to reject it for what it's turning him into is a pretty compelling story, even if it does lead to parts like the nightclub scene. And the villains are also done surprisingly well, which, yes, does include Topher Grace's Venom. but I already got into why he's actually a good villain in another video, which you can also find a link in the description too. So overall, it may not be perfect, and does definitely suffer from a few poor narrative decisions, but it still functions relatively well as a conclusion to the series and its themes. At least until No Way Home came along, which was the perfect love letter to both it and Andrew Garfield's movies, but that's a whole different conversation altogether. Okay, I think that pretty much sums it all up. Now it's your turn to tell me, what did you think of Sam Raimi's original Spider-Man trilogy? And do you agree with what I had to say on each one of them, or not? Whatever the case, please feel free to let me know in the comments. And please keep in mind that you are entitled to your own opinion, and if you think I was completely wrong about everything I said, that is totally fine. And thank you all for watching. It is all very appreciated. And I hope to see you all next time.